Hi, I'm Claudia Tordini. Today, I'm going to share with you the impact of bringing art to the coaching world. I studied coaching with a cohort of 12 students over the course of a year and a half. The experience was so powerful for me that I could not fully express it in words. I needed to find something more creative, which for me as an artist was through a series of paintings. I then shared these paintings with my classmates and professors because they all express our collective experience. Let's listen now to what they have to say.
The art was a way for us to make it more of an experience.
It absolutely brings a whole new level of experiencing it because you're you're just engaging a different part of your brain and your body than you often are when you're sitting around a table talking to each other.
I'm a person who kind of lives in my head, and the emotion part of relationships and just being is a little bit harder for me. And I think the art helped with that emotional connection. So in a coaching experience, it's important to be with emotions.
I think it added an element of reflection.
That is one way to reflect through words, but it's a different depth, I think, of feeling when I look at the pictures that you created.
So I could, look at this and be able to, it sort of will stimulate thinking in my mind, possibly in ways that no one has ever conveyed to me and I never thought of myself. It allows for that type of sort of, creative process to take place.
What the art did for me was it helped bring out what I've learned through my experience. It was a way to showcase individually what we learned piece by piece.
After each weekend, I painted about what had resonated the most for me about the group experience. I touched on various aspects of group dynamics. For example, some of my artwork focuses on group values and attitudes such as inclusion or building trust. I also painted about the various stages of the life of a group, such as becoming a group.
I had this on my phone probably for about 2 years. Basically carry our experience in my pocket.
Part of what you were trying to do with the art was show how we were moving as a cohort through the program.
The art, I think, was a good tool to kind of bridge a lot of group dynamics. There were a few examples, some of the work Claudia put together that illustrated how groups were, and when you saw it after the fact and you saw her perspective on the group, it was very, very meaningful.
The opportunity to really look at it and reflect on it and try to apply it to what was happening within the context of the cohort at different times through the program. It was impactful that way.
This one that I'm looking at right now is definitely my favorite among the group. And then also in this one, there's just something about us sort of being all tangled up together.
Recently, I shared my work with some coaching students whose class was not exposed to art in their learning. In my conversations with them, it was surprising to hear how they could still use my art to reconnect with their own group experiences and reflect on them.
It's interesting because you and I were part of different cohorts. So therefore a whole different set of personalities, different experiences, but you can really, seeing the artwork and hearing you speak about it shows me how much is core to the cohort experience, which I just find fascinating. I can relate to so much of what you're sharing here.
For me, these experiences were a couple of years ago, and to continuously reflect on that experience and the process that we went through and the key learnings that we developed as a result. The further you get removed from them, at times you can forget them. But seeing the artwork and being asked the questions, quite frankly, takes you back through the process. And the artwork actually serves as a grounding point.
Yes, I mean, I can relate to our experiences in cohort, what we went through and how we learn about each other. So I think art is facilitating this discussion and look at it in a more creative and more poetic way, maybe a more emotional way.
I also engaged my cohort in a collective painting exercise towards the end of our class period. It was a team building experience to help us reflect on who we have become together as a group.
That brought the cohort together in a different way.
It made me feel like I was a part of something. Like it made me open up my experience through the cohort.
We were able to look at the art collectively, and we were able to see things that we didn't see before. The shapes we picked, the colors we chose, the risks we were willing to take, or the risks, in my case, that I wasn't willing to take. A lot of that came up in the art, and it created a story of who we were.
Being there, it's the experiential part where when you put your all in, it's not that you're sitting listening to others, it's that it's making the whole experience holistic.
And I engaged the current cohort of students at Penn in a team building exercise right when the team was getting together. The activity was very powerful to reveal how the individual behavior impacts the group dynamic.
It reinforced that idea of forming, that you kind of are anticipating and kind of holding yourself back and observing the group and figuring out where you fit. And that's exactly what we were doing. We were kind of playing off of each other, but very carefully.
You can see how teammates, they were thinking of each other. When people, they think others, and the art creations could be totally different. Mm-hmm. And that's also the team dynamic, like in working settings.
I also had the opportunity to have the current cohort of students at Penn in a creative tool exercise using a full cycle of experiential learning process in their coaching engagements. Each student created a piece of art and reflected on it.
I really allowed myself to just paint and see what came out. Art is something that we put on the canvas, and it comes from a part of the brain that really I don't think needs to be scripted, or it's not edited, because it's really just how you put it down, and you can explore lots of different layers within that.
I think one of the most important things that I got from it is how much of your psyche or your subconscious comes out when you're given a blank canvas.
I think it helped me to think what really I'm struggling with. The reflection part is equally or even more important than the creation part.
After they have finished their creative expression and reflected on it, students coach each other in pairs using their artwork and building on their reflections.
I ended up doing 2 paintings because I really felt like there's 2 different versions, and it actually came out a lot in my coaching session that I tend to have 2 dyads in my life. And mm-hmm. I remember my coach asking me, well, what would it look like to be one painting? And so it really gave us a metaphor to play with and to create something different.
My creation was this sort of creature coming out of water and going into a brighter area. And he asked me about, why was the tail still in the darkness? And I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. The idea that part of it was still in the darkness or, underwater revealed to me a little bit more about, how I might still feel a little stuck or a little attached to that.
My client was kind of a very structured person and love all kind of lines, and when something overlapped each other and not their regular shape, and that kind of drives her kind of not crazy but sort of. It's not perfect, and you can parallel that situations into life. We found a lot of similarities between the creations and her problem.
After the whole experience, we discussed the benefits of using art in developing coaching skills. What came out was very positive and encouraging.
I think the most important thing I got from it is just, the idea that coaching is not one thing, or there isn't one template or one tool.
I think it helped me to understand how other people express themselves and the value in listening to what other people bring and how they see a piece versus how I see it, and being able to really listen and understand different perspectives was valuable.
The power of using art, it's quite beyond your imagination in coaching, and you can only get what I'm saying unless you experience once, or at least once.
Are you ready for it? It's your turn to try it now.